I'm Angie Gonzalez with the New York 1 Minute. Severe storms rolled through the city, bringing thunder, lightning, and drenching downpours. They're moving out of the area, so what's the weekend forecast going to bring? The state says that students don't have to wear masks when they return to class in September, but the City Department of Education says the mask rule will remain in place here. Meanwhile, vaccination sites pop up at several public schools to encourage kids 12 and older to get the COVID shot. And this comes as the CDC sees a rise in hospitalizations among teens. Nearly 600,000 new jobs were created in May, and the nation looks to rebound from the economic losses of the pandemic. The unemployment rate is now down to 5.8%, but that's still higher than when COVID struck. And the early weekend curfew at Washington Square Park goes into effect again at 10 tonight. Details on our top stories coming up in just a moment, but first, a check of your forecast on the ones. The new early curfew at Washington Square Park is back in effect for the second straight weekend. Parkgoers must leave at 10 p.m. Friday through Sunday, which is 2 hours earlier than usual. The NYPD and Parks Department want to cut down on what officials say is disorderly behavior, noise, and large crowds who sometimes refuse to leave when officers tell them. Some incidents have included jumping on cars, throwing objects, in one instance hitting an officer, and another in April when about a dozen bottles were thrown towards officers trying to enforce a curfew. Area residents support the curfew, saying that conditions at the park have worsened in the last year, but some park goers say it's not necessary.
I didn't feel safe, and you should be able to feel safe in a park that you can literally just see across.
It's just been horrible. It's been a nightmare. I haven't gone out after dark.
At nighttime, it's pretty chill. College students chilling, doing like hacky sack or skateboarding, couples making out and stuff like that. But nothing too crazy. So I don't really know. What time did you say the curfew starts?
10 p.m.
That's ridiculous.
The earlier curfew on weekends is indefinite for now. Parks enforcement officers are going to be patrolling the park, and the NYPD has assigned a special detail for weekends. The state releases new numbers showing that 9,200 tickets were issued during the Memorial Day weekend. This enforcement campaign was an effort to combat drunk and impaired driving. Between Friday, May the 28th and Tuesday, June 1st, a total of 9,214 tickets were issued statewide. The office also says that state troopers arrested 185 people for DWI. Nearly 4,000 speeding tickets were also issued, along with 415 tickets for distracted driving. There were 3,100 seatbelt violations handed out as well. Police are still investigating several train slashings that took place in recent weeks. The latest incident happening Thursday night at Central Park North and Lenox Avenue. Investigators say that 2 people were stabbed. Now, prior to this, police say that suspects in connection with a slashing last month were caught and charged. Earlier this year, the NYPD added 500 officers to the 2,500 existing transit cops working underground. The latest attacks come after an uptick in crime last month in the city's transit system. The NYPD released crime stats showing a 93% increase in subway crime when comparing numbers from May of this year to May of 2020. Our Amy Yancey puts it into context and talks to subway riders. The Port Authority is advancing the plan for the world's busiest bus terminal with new green spaces and improved commuter amenities. The agency announced a federal environmental approval process that's going to take place across 4 public meetings to be held later this month. It's part of an infrastructure plan aimed at increasing ridership at the Port Authority bus terminal by 40%. The proposal includes adding 3.5 new acres of public green space and removing bus traffic from city streets. They're also planning to replace the existing 8th Avenue terminal with a state-of-the-art facility and a bus shortage and staging building between 9th and 10th Avenues, where buses currently load and unload. The live-streamed meetings are going to be held June the 23rd and 24th. The city's public schools will continue to require students and staff to wear masks, even as the state plans to relax minimum guidelines. The state intends to allow school districts to waive the mask mandate in schools and camps starting on Monday. That's assuming that the CDC has no objections. The new state standard would, quote, strongly encourage mask use indoors for unvaccinated students and staff, but wouldn't require it. Schools would be able to set their own stricter guidelines. The city currently requires that masks be worn at school and outside or during sporting events by both students and staff, even if they've been vaccinated. The city is expanding its vaccination options by administering the vaccine at select city school sites. Those 12 and up are eligible to receive a dose. Jordan Mott Junior High School is among the 4 schools in the Bronx that are hosting pop-up vaccination sites. The Pfizer vaccine is also being given out at the Bronx Writing Academy, Junior High School 118 and Middle School 180. Other schools across the city are going to host vaccine pop-up locations in the coming weeks.
Parents don't have to sometimes don't know where to go to get vaccination. This is an opportunity for them to come to a place where they're comfortable with, that they know the school.
Being able to offer multiple different outlets to get the vaccine is the most important way of stopping the spread.
Sunday and Monday from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Shots are also going to be offered in Manhattan at IS 90, in Brooklyn at IS 88, and again in the Bronx at PS 214. Vaccines are free, but children must be accompanied by a parent or guardian. Friends and family members can also get their shot at these locations. The CDC is urging parents to vaccinate their teens after an increase in hospitalizations among 12 to 17-year-olds. According to a newly released study, more than 200 teens were hospitalized between January and March. Nearly a third of them were admitted to ICUs and 10 were put on ventilators. There were no reported deaths. After peaking in January, teen hospitalization rates rose again to more than 1% in April. That came after the rates among people 65 and older stabilized. Hospitalization rates for adolescents are still lower than adults. Now, experts say that the increase, though, may be attributed to more contagious variants, schools and indoor activities reopening and not wearing masks, as well as not social distancing. Mexico is going to begin vaccinating residents at their northern border. Officials say that they will use the 1 million doses of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine donated by the U.S. government. It's all in an effort to fully reopen border crossings between the two countries. Authorities say they will need another 2 million doses of the one-shot vaccine for the remaining 3 million border residents between the ages of 18 to 40. The announcement comes as Mexico City gradually begins lifting lockdown restrictions that were put in place more than a year ago. Former President Donald Trump will remain suspended from Facebook for 2 years. The social media company ruled that he incited violence ahead of the riots at the Capitol, and he's now going to be suspended until at least January of 2023. After that, Facebook is going to reassess whether or not Trump is still a risk to public safety. Users can still read and comment on past posts, but Trump and other account handlers are unable to post any new material. Facebook also says it will no longer exempt politicians from rules that prohibit hate speech and abuse on the platform, but there's still a newsworthiness exemption to certain posts. Trump's Twitter account has been suspended permanently. The National Rifle Association is dropping its countersuit against State Attorney General Letitia James. The lawsuit was filed last August, on the same day that James filed her lawsuit to dissolve the organization. In her suit, the Attorney General accuses the NRA and 4 of the organization's top executives of failing to manage its funds and failing to follow numerous state and federal laws. In a statement, James said, quote, "We were victorious against the organization's attempt to declare bankruptcy, and our fight for transparency and accountability will continue because no one is above the law," end quote. Now, in an effort to avoid accountability, the NRA filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy back in January. Last month, a federal bankruptcy court in Texas rejected the organization's claims, stating that the NRA did not file in good faith. We've reached out to the NRA for comment, but have yet to hear back. The latest jobs report is unveiled, and the numbers show 559,000 new hirings in May. Now, that's a big improvement from the unexpectedly sluggish 266,000 jobs that were added in April. The unemployment rate in May fell to 5.8%, the lowest since the pandemic hit, but still significantly higher than the 3.8% recorded in February of last year. Biden said that there are strong indications that the economy is rebounding, citing the 2 million jobs created since he took office, as well as the strides his administration is making against the pandemic.
COVID cases are down. Unemployment filings are down. Hunger is down. And vaccinations are up. Jobs are up. Wages are up. Manufacturing is up. Growth is up. People gaining health care coverage is up, and small business confidence is up. America is finally on the move again.
Unemployment filings dropped by 35% since late April to a pandemic low of 385,000 last week. Women accounted for the most of the jobs added, with 381,000 new hirings. But last month's gains also suggests that many companies are struggling to find enough workers. A week before the start of early voting, the three Democratic mayoral candidates leading in the polls were on the attack against each other. Catherine Garcia announced a plan to curb violence, and Eric Adams got another boost from the city's labor sector. Andrew Yang was rallying with supporters from the Hasidic community in Brooklyn. New York One's Gloria Pazmino filed this report from the campaign trail. Meantime, mayoral candidate Maya Wiley is hoping that some new endorsements mean that the left wing of the party is rallying behind her. The Working Families Party initially ranked Wiley as its third choice, but party leaders now list her as their first pick on the ranked choice ballot. Their original first choice, Scott Stringer, and second choice, Diane Morales, have been plagued by scandals and campaign controversy. The change comes the same day that Wiley announced endorsements from a slate of Brooklyn lawmakers, including State Senator Julia Salazar, Assembly members Maritza Davila, and Emily Gallagher.
We are feeling the coalescence, but more importantly, it is clear, and I say this with a humble honor, that I'm the progressive that's going to win this race.
Wiley's supporters say left-wing voters should back her, in part to keep moderate candidates out of City Hall. The three leading Democratic candidates for Queensborough president squared off in a debate seen right here on New York One. The candidates are incumbent borough president Donovan Richards, city council member Jimmy Van Bramer, and former city council member Elizabeth Crowley. One of the big topics was developmental projects in the borough, including the plan to rezone 29 acres of the Flushing waterfront to include about 1,700 apartments, a hotel, an office building, and more.
The mandatory inclusionary affordable housing was at 30% for the new rezoned area, and I support that. I believe that's a good amount of affordable housing. It's just that too many of Queens residents are not fitting in that area median income of $83,000. We need to look at recalculating that.
Overall, for a community that needs to see jobs, needs more commercial development, it was good from that aspect. But the affordability, I'm hoping the next administration will revisit.
People in Queens are struggling to pay the rent even more so during a pandemic. And the last thing that we should be doing is approving a project that's 95% market or luxury housing and only 5% affordable.
Richards became borough president last year after winning a special election to fill out Melinda Katz's term after she became Queens district attorney. Crowley also ran last year and was runner-up to Richards in the primary. The winner of the Democratic primary this time around would be the heavy favorite in the general election. He's known all around the globe as part of the legendary hip-hop group Run DMC. But now Daryl McDaniels is enjoying a full-circle moment in his latest role as an advocate for the rights of children who've been adopted and learning more about his own history in the process. New York One's Lori Chung has this exclusive story. In the Heights is finally set to hit movie theaters next week after the pandemic delayed its original release last year. The big screen version of Lin-Manuel Miranda's Broadway hit is a love letter to Washington Heights, where its creator grew up and still lives. New York One's Cheryl Wills sat down with Lin-Manuel Miranda and his father Luis to talk about the musical journey and what needs to be done to help their neighborhood recover from COVID. About 1 in 3 LGBTQ seniors find themselves without anyone to care for them, and the pandemic may have exacerbated this problem. As we mark Pride Month here on New York One, our Michael Herzenberg checks in with 3 women living alone who started taking online classes as a way to stay connected to others. Subway riders will once again hear more than just the roar of the trains underground. The MTA's Music Under New York program is now back after being stopped last year due to the pandemic. New York One's Roger Clark spoke with some of the performers looking forward to getting down again below street level. That's all for this half hour of news. Stay with us for the latest on all your top stories and your weather on the ones in our next half hour.